What is the date? October 26th, meeting of the Infrastructure Committee to order. Hello, everybody. So our first item on the agenda is to approve the September minutes. So Rob had a comment that he did attend the meeting. He just thought it was a bit late. So I think the minutes need to be updated to reflect that he was present. I think you're right around like 1:15, maybe 1:10, 1:15. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments about the minutes?
Okay. Yeah, it looks good.
All right. To move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Okay, support that.
Motion. Okay, I think we're approving the minutes. Who is responsible for putting the minutes on the website? Is that Missy or Michelle?
Missy, yeah.
Okay, so we'll let her know. I think some of the other minutes also need to be posted. All right. Next item up for discussion is outdoor dining. So we have a draft ordinance that hopefully everybody got a chance to take a look at. I have another copy of it here. If somebody needs a physical copy. Otherwise, seeing y'all are up on it, I'm going to use the physical copy. Actually, maybe I had some notes written up. All right, so comments about the draft ordinance. So for everybody who's paying attention to this at home, this is we passed special allowance for businesses to use the right-of-way and parking spaces during the pandemic. It's expired a few months ago. We're working on more permanent legislation. All right, so I've got some thoughts written up. So there are two places where we say that tables need to be smooth-sided and...
There is a copy of, I just haven't seen it. I must
You
have
haven't
missed
seen
it. Was it in the email? I probably
It was in
missed
the packet,
Yeah.
which went out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll look in there. I just missed it. No, I'll find it. Don't worry.
Okay,
Keep
otherwise,
going.
all right. So there's two places, let's see, 46, 22, F, and 23E. Surfaces of tables shall be smooth, durable, and sealed to render them easily cleanable. So I understand why this was put in there, but I don't think we want to force people to buy new tables. I think if we were making this from scratch, that might be a provision we would include, but businesses already have their tables out there, and I don't think it's enough of an issue to ask them to buy new tables.
Yeah, I don't want to burden our businesses more than necessary.
Well, let me hand you this, because
No,
I
that's fine. I'll
have
just flip pages with them.
I have the packet. That's a good question.
It's page 2, maybe?
Sorry, it's right near the beginning of the packet. It's the next thing after the agenda. Starting on page 2 of the packet.
Okay, well, whatever. Yeah, no, don't worry. I don't want to close that.
I'll give you the physical copy because we've got the packet. All right. The next. All right. So there was we were queried on 446.22I, which is talking about what to do if there's a residential area next to the restaurant. So right now it says if the outdoor dining area abuts a residential zoning district, a 20-foot planted buffer area must be installed along the entire property line adjacent to the abutting district, and the hours of operation of such outdoor dining area shall be limited to the hours between, and there's space for us to insert something. It's in yellow on this portion. So what do we? So the idea. So we've got a restaurant. They've got outdoor dining, and then there's, I guess, a house next door is what we're envisioning. This is like Ryan Christopher's setup, or I don't know who else would be in this scenario.
Mhm.
Do we want to put a time limit on the outdoor dining? I don't know. I mean, my initial thought was something like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I don't know what our usual, what does it say in the borough? What's the noise provision in the borough code say for like, yard work or whatever? Is that 8 a.m. till?
I want to say it's, like 8 or 9 a.m. until, like 7 or 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's different on the weekends also maybe, but.
I think maybe we should match the time for noise in general, except it could go later. I mean, it's a restaurant, so it's
Yeah, it's
all.
not Haverford Avenue, it seems.
Well, this I think is
So
just,
ought to have it,
yeah, this is for the residential, for like things that are next to residential.
right, okay.
Only if it abuts a residential. I mean, the ones on Haverford Avenue, there's apartments upstairs, but they gotta
do
be.
they abut?
But it has to be zoned residential, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think, I don't know if we want to draw.
Residential zones,
Okay,
if it
So-
abuts.
what do you think?
If
Mike?
it, so do we really mean if it's within a residential zoning district?
If it
or do we mean
abuts.
it abuts?
Abuts.
That's
Is
what
that
it
we
says right
mean?
there.
I mean, is that what we want to say? Because everything abuts a residential zoning district.
Well, if it's a
somewhere, so-
property, it doesn't.
I'm just trying to figure out what that means.
It's only if the area, like the physical area, abuts a resident. So
Okay.
if there's a single family house next to it, I guess, or something. I don't know.
I mean, there's great land.
What are
It's in
planning
a
commission?
residential district.
What's that?
Ryan Christopher's is in a residential
Yeah.
district.
So that one would abut a residential district, right?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's,
Okay, so I guess the intention is just to protect residents who are not in a commercial area like the downtown or Montgomery Ave from excess noise. I mean, we could just strike this.
no, I'm just trying, I'm sorry, I didn't, just please ignore me because I'm just looking at this for the first
That's
time.
fine.
I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah, I have no strong opinion. I mean, I don't
It's
think
fine.
most restaurants are open.
I wanted to make sure it was clear exactly what we're talking about, but I think it is, because he talks about a property line adjacent to an abutting district, so I think it's fairly clear what we're talking about.
All
Because there
right.
could be some things that abut, like Gray Lane, it's right behind the Greeks, but I don't think that would be abutting,
Right.
probably, well, so. As long as it's clear what we're talking about.
All right.
It's good. All right.
So we did an hour, so like 10 p.m. I mean, people aren't going to be, I don't know.
I think 10 p.m. sounds fine. What
Alright.
are my 2 cents for? This is really more of a policy decision than a manager administrative
Yeah.
decision.
Abutting a residential zoning district,
Yeah.
or would make it earlier than 10?
Okay,
So the noise ordinance we have goes until 8 p.m.
Yeah, I would go with that for residential.
8
zoning
p.m. I mean, people have to really eat their dinner, but, okay.
Yeah,
All right, well, so we'll match what we have for the next
But,
ordinance. That's fine.
because it doesn't
Okay.
carry over to those areas that don't abut residential zoning districts, so it's not. it's
I
not
mean,
a
it
problem.
potentially impacts the seat. So Ryan Christopher's curling has like, I mean, they may have had outdoor dining before, right? So it impacts. They may have been more free before.
Well, that's a good point, yeah, how long were they, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
does it, oh boy, this is a tricky one.
I mean, let's say 8 to 8 right now, and we can see, we can always.
Right, you're right, they don't
reevaluate.
have a 20-foot planted buffer necessarily. right
No,
now.
I don't think they have a 20-foot planted buffer either.
So in that
They're asking
regard,
them
they were also freer enough than they would be. under this.
Yeah, I
Well, they would
don't
probably
wanna.
be, they would probably be grandfathered.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
I
okay,
think.
yeah.
Well, but not for
Well,
the
I think
time.
they'd be, no, not for the, I think they'd be grandfathered with the buffer, yes. I don't think they'd be grandfathered for the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah, I don't want to impose a hardship. These restaurants are struggling.
Yeah,
So,
It's
maybe,
fine.
maybe 10 is the right thing to say then. Can start there, can,
Yeah, let's try 10,
it could be
because,
changed
So
if it's
9 a.m.
a
to 10
disturbance that
p.m.?
doesn't already exist.
or 8 a.m.,
Yes, it
whatever the
is.
current, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Moving along. All right, so the other, let's see, we've got
Yeah, I'm sorry, you look at that.
446.
Here, I have it up.
All right. 44622P, enhancements are permitted in the right-of-way only during business hours. Storage of enhancements shall be within the building during non-business hours unless otherwise permitted by the borough. I guess we can permit it, but the right-of-way shall be clean at the end of each business day. All food debris shall be removed. So I guess the question is, do we want to make everybody move all their stuff inside every day and pull it out again? Is that a concern?
How is enhancement defined? Does that mean the whole structure?
Let's see. Yeah.
This is
Definition,
yeah.
Enhancement. Pretty much everything. A temporary movable piece of equipment, furniture, or similar unaffixed item located within the outdoor dining area. Not including but not limited to tables, chairs, table settings, umbrellas, railings, fences, lights, heaters, fans, that's pretty much everything.
So this is definitely not the status quo, right? I mean, they're leaving
No.
the things
Right.
out there right now. We see.
Yeah,
I don't see a huge need to.
Yeah,
to remove it
my only
every day.
concern, I think we talked last time, was about snow plowing, but didn't we
Right.
decide that Haverford is not an emergency route? Isn't that what we
No, Haverford, I think is, but what we decided was, John Walker put language in here that,
Okay, that's L, 22L. All enhancements shall be removed from all areas of the right-of-way when a snow or ice emergency is declared by the borough, when it's otherwise anticipated, or during
Okay.
times of scheduled street cleaning. So when we ask them, they remove it.
Okay.
yeah, so given that L is in there, I mean, administratively, I would be fine if we got rid of P.
Yeah, I think P is
Okay.
asking.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's
That makes sense.
they're doing it now. It's
I
not a
think
problem.
that's
I
right.
think we can get rid of P.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's also in 23M. It's the same provision for. So that we've got different rules for in the right of way and in the parking spaces, but
Yeah.
a lot of them carry over. So. Okay. All right. Business services shall not be provided in the right of way outside of the outdoor dining area. So in the past, people have had like lines outside. So like, I mean, the ice cream store does their line outside. I guess that could be considered the outdoor dining area. I don't know. I mean, in the early part of the pandemic, when people were like going one at a time into the stores, they definitely had people waiting outside.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure there's
Yeah.
allowance for people waiting outside the store.
Yeah, an outdoor dining area is a very loosely defined term. It's just defined as an area designated within the permit that will be used and occupied by a permittee.
Yeah, I just say that
Or the-
maybe put that queuing is allowed. Like you can queue, but you can't have a cash register outside or something. I think the intent is not to do business outside. Like that's not. No cashiers, no host stations.
Sure.
That seems fine.
So security personnel and wait staff for customer queuing.
Right, they've got
Doesn't
security
need
personnel and wait
customer
staff,
queuing
and then we can
permitted.
just add customer queuing in, where are we, 44622R. There's a lot here. Okay, enhancements shall not, this is 22U, enhancements shall not block or obstruct public street or sidewalk fixtures, including but not limited to bus benches or shelters, parking meters, or public utility boxes and poles.
Can we have bicycle hedges?
Well, yes, we can add
I know they're all parking meters generally.
bike racks. I mean, the points where we give people parking spaces, they're going to be blocking the parking meters, but that's fine. I guess I just don't know how you tell if it's blocking like a utility box or a pole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can see most of these, right? You're not gonna, we don't want bus benches and shelters, but I don't have a sense of, I mean, there's
I
those
mean-
little pop-up boxes all over
And
downtown.
truth be told,
Yeah.
that's going to become an issue if someone needs access to a public utility box and they can say, you have to move this now.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think we should enforce that unless it's,
Which is covered already
Important.
actually
It's hard
in
for me-
Elm.
Hard for me to
All right.
imagine anybody enforcing that.
fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
For no
Right,
reason.
unless there's a
Move
need.
that along.
Yeah.
Okay, so this says you need 3 feet of right-of-way for a public. Where is that? 22J, going back a little bit.
Okay.
Continuous unobstructed pedestrian pathway at least 3 feet in width is what we need to get through the sidewalk. Is that sufficient?
I don't know, I haven't been out there to measure, but
I don't know, what's, the ADA sidewalk width is 5 feet.
Yeah, so this is already
This is
significantly
less.
lower.
Oh, well, where, I mean, why, well,
Water.
maybe give us some background on where we
Yeah.
can't, why, we're at 3.
So ADA is, well, there are 2 ADA recommendations. One is 5, or you're also allowed to get away with 4 feet with a 5-foot section every
Right.
200 feet.
Hello.
And we came up, John and I came up with 3. That was my interpretation of our last meeting, was we felt 3 would allow for the existing obstructions in the sidewalk
Mhm.
while still maintaining some sort of open area for people.
Yeah, I think this ADA is 4. I mean,
Well,
So you just want to get rid of the, you want to get rid of the part where it says at least 3 feet width and just, continuous pathway compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act?
well, I mean, maybe we should, given that we know what the ADA rule is, I don't think we can specify something less stringent, right? I mean,
I agree.
I think we have to go with at least 4
I
here.
think we should, comply with the ADA rule. Yeah. I don't know how, every 200 feet, that's hard to think.
Well, I think we'll just assume that that is met.
It's
There's
interesting,
so many
because
different
that, of course,
fronts.
can't really be effectuated by any given business, that's really the borough that would be.
Right,
right.
have to be
That's
in
our,
compliance
well,
with the
it's on
ADA.
us.
And that would mean we'd have to like literally go measure and tell people, okay, decide who's, I don't know.
I mean,
I would think we could start with 4. And if we
yeah,
see-
so this is gonna affect the, like the placement of those individual tables. This shouldn't affect the permanent structures, which are in the
Right.
In the
parking
parking
lots, in the parking spaces. So
Mhm.
presumably the business should be able to comply with that.
Yeah, I feel like 4 feet is a
Let's-
reasonable
let's
minimum.
try 4 here. Let's
I
choose
think
a
we can go
4.
that right. And try to think about getting,
I mean, yeah, it may have been our discussion earlier,
wheelchair 2 or 3
but
feet, it's.
given new
tough.
information.
I mean, there may be exceptions there that, I don't know, that we want to allow. I kind of want to walk the street to know. I just
Yeah.
don't want to harm the businesses.
Well, I mean, I think there's a provision that if a business wants to, and presumably there's a way for a business to talk to us about a variance or something, or come to council and,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, request a waiver for hardship for something.
okay.
All right, last item is smoking. We want to allow smoking in these outdoor spaces. Right now, my reading of the Pennsylvania bill is that any structure with walls and a roof,
Mhm.
even if it's outside, there's no smoking. So that would cover the McShay's tent and the Greek structure. But the outdoor tables, there's currently, presumptively, they'd be allowed to smoke, which I don't think it's been an issue. I haven't heard any complaints of any kind. Samantha, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think, I defer to John Walco. It looks like, for this, it looks like legally we could decide if we wanted to prohibit it. I think that's up to you all to decide whether that's the right policy decision or not.
I mean,
I don't know who's going to enforce that. So, I mean,
I don't see a reason to prohibit it. I mean, it's not generally a problem in the borough. We don't have serious secondhand smoke issues.
Yeah, and I
so
mean, yeah,
I'm
to
willing
be
I'm willing
honest.
to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
Not
I
worried
don't,
about that.
I don't see I would not reasonably expect the borough code enforcement officer or borough police department to, be going around enforcing something like that.
Also,
so.
an excellent point.
I would not recommend even attempting to
So-
enforce
Sorry.
certain places and times.
Yeah,
So
outside of
let's,
bar,
let's
people are
remove,
smoking outside of
we'll
bar.
remove that from the.
Yeah, right, outside of
Yeah,
bar.
that was up to us, I think we were. All right, I see a couple more areas in yellow here, which were, John wanted our opinion, and we can move on. Enhancements shall be placed so as not to block or obstruct vehicular visibility areas, including but not limited to 25 feet from the outside curb edge of any intersecting sidewalks. This is T, section 23T. 25 feet from the outside curb edge of any intersecting sidewalks at the intersection of any 2 streets. The 25 feet is what he highlighted. and I can't really picture this, so we're 5 feet from the outside curb edge of any intersecting sidewalks at the intersection of any two streets.
Yeah, like they don't want it too close to the.
A corner, so that's a corner.
Yeah,
So you can't be 25, you have to be more than 25 feet from the corner of a sidewalk, or two sidewalks meet.
That's in both sections.
Yeah.
Or is it just in the right-of-way section? I'm curious.
The second one, there's also M,
That's 50 feet.
yeah, that's 50 feet, but that's,
Wait, no, that's.
no, that's during any repair or maintenance
Sorry,
of a public utility within 50 feet.
Uh,
I don't know if I have an opinion here, I think maybe just leave these as written.
mm-hmm.
I do not see that same thing replicated in the dining within parking area. I don't see a restriction. I mean, I don't see anything that says it can't be placed in a way to
Okay.
obstruct visibility, which is interesting.
Do we have any opinions here? Just let it go as written?
Well, I mean, in the parking, we already have those curb to corner, what is it? You know, we have those provisions, right? You can't park that close to the corner.
That's right. There's no parking spaces that close to the corner for that reason.
25 feet?
I think so. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't, there's
because when we
no,
looked up, Chief Gallagher, I don't know if you remember this, when we had, for PHS, we had a complaint about no parking
Mhm.
over on South Narberth, and our public works foreman found that you're not allowed to park within 20 feet per state law, within 20 feet of an intersection.
I think it has something to do, 15 to 20, and it has to do with traffic controlled intersection at that location. So if you have a stop sign, or if you have a traffic light, it's gotta be 20 feet away from the corner. But if that's a corner that has no traffic control, it's gotta be 15 feet away from the corner.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna assume these numbers are right unless y'all wanna weigh in. This is beyond my expertise, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, do we have any other comments about this? Because otherwise I think it's, once changes are made, it's gonna move up to.
We have the
full council.
pedestrian pathway provision also in the dining within parking area section, requiring a pedestrian pathway of at least 3 feet width in that section. Does that belong there? I mean, is that something?
It's in a parking spot.
No, I think we should remove that.
Yeah.
What's the
It's
letter? I.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of written.
Well, they have to
in
allow people around it. I think
It's
maybe
like-
that's written so that,
a path to access the,
Okay, yeah,
I mean, I guess it has to be written so that if it's in the parking spaces, then it extends onto the right of way. Like if it goes from the parking space onto the right of way, but it can't. You still have to have a 3-foot path around it. I mean, you have to really get
well,
behind.
then it's
right?
in the right of way, and it's governed by that, so. I mean,
Okay.
well, it doesn't bother me if it stays in there. I think it's just not, I think it's just superfluous. but-
Okay. I don't think people are gonna,
So how will we enforce this? Just by issuing, I mean, if there's a, if
Well, what we
There's
could
a
do
case.
is if someone violates it, I mean, we could just revoke their, well, make sure that's in the ordinance, and we could just revoke their outdoor dining.
I mean, I think it's probably gonna be complaint driven if there's blockage.
no, but it would be revocation of their outdoor dining permit.
Yeah, we got, like, if it was one complaint, no, I mean, the
No.
borough would call the property owner during business hours and be like, hey, we got this complaint, fix it. And then if complaints continue, then, the borough, will be able, to revoke the permit.
Mhm.
I should make sure of that.
Well, I mean,
I don't see
individual
anything-
clauses have, upon failure to do this, this is what'll happen, but we don't have like a general,
So, okay.
yeah, good point.
Where do we have mention or, is there, of a permit at all? I mean, do we have a reference to a permitting system? I don't know.
Upon
Like-
securing a permit
Just
from the
it's called
Bureau.
permit requirements, okay, so
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
At the beginning of 23, it says,
Yeah.
upon securing a permit from the borough.
And then also,
Oh, yeah, there it is, okay, entity with current violation by permit.
and then also
I see.
in 20J, it says, if deemed necessary by the borough, an outdoor dining permit application shall be forwarded to the borough zoning officer, police department, director of public works, and/or fire department for review and approval.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as it's clear that the permits are conditioned upon, that, then revocation is kind of obvious.
Mhm.
Here we go, yeah, and then L, yeah, an outdoor dining permit may be revoked by the borough if the borough determines that the permittee is in violation of the regulations of this article.
Perfect. All right.
That is the thing.
Yeah, I don't think we need penalties beyond that. That's
No,
enough.
not at all.
Okay.
So can I summarize the changes that we're talking about and make sure I get John Walker, the borough solicitor, the right information?
Please do.
Yeah, although, I mean, I guess I will just, I'm sorry, just one more. I see that provision, it's in L under, maybe it's replicated in both sections. It's under outdoor, okay, oh, I see, all right. Never mind, no, carry on. I got it, I figured, I got it, makes total sense, good.
All right, so we have discussed removing sections 22F and 23E that talk about the table surfaces. We talked about the timing in 23H and 22I being 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. We talked about removing the overnight storage provisions found in 22P and 23M. We talked about modifying 22R to allow for wait staff and customer queuing. And we talked about amending 22J and 23I to be a 4-foot area instead of a 3-foot area. And then we talked about removing 23R and 22Y regarding smoking.
That's everything, I believe. All right, thanks everybody. That was a lot of minutiae, but good to get through now. Any other comments? All right, thanks. Next item on the agenda is the sidewalk inspection program.
Yay.
Why don't you walk us through this proposal?
Sure. So,
Sorry.
sure. Thank you, Councilmember Bush. So, per the memo that I wrote up, I've gotten complaints in my time working here about sidewalk conditions. Also, in my recent review of the Borough Comprehensive Plan, it notes that the borough needs to review and amend its sidewalk maintenance ordinance and develop a sidewalk maintenance and repair program. So I outlined in my memo what the borough is doing right now, which the only thing we're doing right now is when a use and occupancy permit is issued, then the sidewalk is reviewed at that point. Looking in borough ordinance and talking with the borough solicitor, we're actually currently on shaky ground to even be doing that. So the solicitor is working on an updated use and occupancy ordinance that would give us the official, clearly defined power to be doing what we're doing. And the other issue of sidewalks isn't just the condition of the sidewalk, but it's vegetation and obstructions in the sidewalk. And right now we really have, very limited ways of dealing with that. Generally, if we get a complaint about vegetation in the sidewalk, then we do send a letter to the property owner, and then from time to time the Borough Public Works Department will actually trim back vegetation on the sidewalk. Our current regulations as well do allow for us to require snow and ice removal from sidewalks. We do require repairing sidewalk that is out of repair or a tripping hazard. However, neither of those terms are formally defined, which makes enforcement kind of tricky sometimes. And we do have requirements for vegetation in that it can't be less than 8 feet above the sidewalk, which is someone who is 6'2", I appreciate that. And then as well, the vegetation isn't supposed to be more than vegetation adjacent, more than 4 feet high if it's immediately adjacent to the sidewalk. I took a look in particular at Lower Marion Township sidewalk ordinance. And theirs has some similar parts to ours. Snow and ice have to be removed within 24 hours. However, they formally define, what repair and tripping hazards are as a sidewalk with an elevation of more than 1/4 of an inch, or a crack that's more than 1/2 inch in width. They also explicitly ban obstructions from being in the sidewalk, such as bicycles or temporary signs or that sort of thing, which we currently don't do. And then it also explicitly says that any plant that encroaches onto a sidewalk has to be removed. So I would recommend that the borough do two things. Number one, as I mentioned, pass an updated use and occupancy ordinance to clearly legalize what we're currently doing, and then pass amendments to our current sidewalk ordinance in line with the Lower Merion one to allow us greater enforcement and more clearly defined enforcement protocol. And then to actually implement all this, I talked with the borough code enforcement officer about doing a walk around of the entire borough, which I don't know if has ever been done, to identify where problem sidewalks are, notify the property owners and all that. If just he alone were to do it, he estimated to be between $20,000 and $30,000. However, his other option that he proposed, which even I think he would suggest would be the way to do this, is he could get together, especially if we clearly define standards, he could get together with the Public Works Department, do walk around with them for maybe a day or half a day or something, and kind of point out what to be looking for and what the standards are. And then beyond that, allow the Borough Public Works staff to identify where the problems are, take pictures, send them back to the code enforcement officer, who could then send out, the notice letters and all that sort of thing, which would dramatically reduce the cost. I think we're probably looking at more like $2,500 to $5,000 versus $20,000 to $30,000. I have not had a chance to discuss that proposal with our public works manager, but I don't, it's been mentioned in staff meeting before, and he was present in his former job capacity in those staff meetings, so he is certainly aware, and I don't think he would have any issues with such a proposal. So that's what I'm recommending we do, is update our ordinances, and which the first solicitor is starting to work on, and then once they're updated, allow the code enforcement officer and make sure we budget in the 2022 budget the money, for the code enforcement officer to spend time on this at that lower amount, and be okay with the Public Works Department working on this.
So how about follow-up? So once the initial survey has been completed and we've identified problem areas, there's still follow-up with the homeowners and making sure the property owners, making sure the repairs are made.
Yeah, and that's a job I would want to entrust to the code enforcement officer.
Wait, can you repeat your question?
Okay, so they're going to do the audit and they're going to find the problem areas, right? So we've got an initial estimate for what that would take.
That's all.
So the second thing is, well, once we've found the problems, we need to contact the homeowners, the property owners with the problem sidewalks, and then make sure that they remedy the issues. So that's another significant amount of time.
Oh, no, sorry, those numbers that I gave, that included that part of the process as well. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead,
I was just going to say that this is something that I know Fred has been wanting. I think many of us have wanted to do this for years, and I'm sure I'm not the only family that has experienced injuries. Older parents visiting who have fallen on these sidewalks and tripped. So this is a public safety measure as well as an infrastructure, really crosses the committee. And now that we have our lights, and we can actually walk at night, I would love this, the timing of this is really, good in that sense. So I just had one comment I had was, I know we will have more and more folks running charging cables over the sidewalks. So I just want to be sure that that's not deemed an obstruction or have some provision
Oh, yeah.
for electric vehicle charging.
We talked about that, remember, maybe we should revisit that. We were gonna do
Yeah.
it, we were good, I think we said, let's table this until the parking recommendations come in to see how that fits with it, but street side EV charging is something we really,
Yeah, we need to address.
we
It's
shouldn't
true.
forget about that, we shouldn't let that fall through the cracks.
We can
Yeah.
see if we can find legislation elsewhere that addresses that.
Yeah.
Steal their language.
That's a good idea.
Jim Spear has a solution for the charging.
Yeah, Jim will know.
Well, I think it was this committee, I think what last month where we talked about as well, trying to figure out how to get more of those, garage orphan, chargers put up in residential parts of the borough.
Right.
So just on a quick sidebar with that, I am talking to Flo about that, and we're working to schedule a call with Pico to get more information on how that would work. So hopefully next month I can report back more to this committee on how that's coming along.
Yeah, and maybe then, I don't know if it's premature to find out do they have data, or do we have data on what the use of the two chargers that we
Oh,
have?
yeah, we do, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we
Yeah.
can talk about that next month, you don't
Oh,
have to do it now.
so I can pull it up the
Because I'd be
dashboard
curious.
right now.
I think it's exciting, and it's good for people to see the difference it's making.
All right, so going back to sidewalks.
Yeah.
So back to the sidewalks, I have two questions. Well, one is that I was surprised to see that our current ordinances say that you can't have any vegetation higher than 4 feet adjacent to a sidewalk. I actually question the necessity or wisdom of that. If it's not encroaching, I think, people have some lovely edges that are 6 feet tall and they're not,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously we're not gonna ask them to cut them down, and I mean, properly planted and sized, they want privacy in their front yard from vegetation. I'm not
Yeah.
sure I have an interest in preventing that.
I don't remember that part of the code, so.
Yeah, I don't,
I mean,
well, we've
yeah,
never, clearly
it's
never
in there,
enforced it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
We've never enforced it, and given that, I think I've never had a complaint about it. I mean, I have people complain about when they're spilling into the sidewalk, obviously, and preventing people from getting by, but as long as they're,
Right.
and,
Well, we do have a code
properly-
about how high your fences can be, right?
Fences, yeah, but.
Yeah, 6 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't, you're plant your screen of bamboo. I think bamboo might be, well, I don't think maybe it was illegal in Mulberry. I don't know if it's legal here.
Yeah, I would
It's not
agree with
really
Michelle. The
should be.
only exception, I think, is at the corners, for example, of East Winwood and Mary, when we're trying to make a turn, if we have adjacent vegetation that's 4 feet, it could obstruct.
Yeah, bamboo is not illegal here.
But,
Well, anyway, I would question whether we need to keep people's hedges down to 4 feet next to the sidewalk. So,
I mean, we
anyway,
just
put that
really-
out there, I was surprised to hear that.
I mean, I think the main problem is encroaching on the sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah.
Alongside the
Encroaching is the
sidewalk.
problem.
I don't know.
I don't know what other places do, it seems a little.
Yeah, I've never,
Seems
I mean, at
simple.
least in my last job, that provision did not exist.
Okay.
Now, I
Yeah.
have a question about enforcement. I mean, so are there some places in the borough code where we specifically set forth, and I don't know what our current sidewalk ordinance says, I'm just looking at a different one. This is like the firework one. It says any borough law enforcement officer or building code official may issue a summary citation. Like, we set that forth in some sections of our code, suggesting to me that it may not be legally required that building code official be the one to issue a letter or a citation. I'm wondering if it's necessary, where I'm going with this. Is it even necessary for Kevin to be the one to send off the first letter? That may lead to sort of easy compliance, and we don't need to pay him to do that. Is that something we can do administratively and then only involve him if it leads to a citation?
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is, basically it'd be a form letter, sort of thing. We could do it that way and, put maybe Kevin's contact info on it if you have questions or follow-up or something like that. It's not that hard to send out a mail merge. So we could send the initial letter, but I would want to put Kevin's info as the callback person for it.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, this is one of the issues that got me onto council in the first place, was
Mhm.
concern about the sidewalks. I had had injuries in the family from these sidewalks. There are, you mentioned, I think, 2 areas of the comp plan. There are at least, I think, 5 more sections that deal with sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Complete a walkability audit, enact a borough-wide sidewalk repair program, provide outreach to property owners, identify improvements to key connections. I mean, I don't know. There's a couple
It's
more
one of
too.
our major points of pride,
Yeah.
and selling points is we are a sidewalk community. Therefore,
Yeah,
a
and-
sidewalk should be
I think
traversable.
everybody out there who's listening knows that the borough
It's a problem.
sidewalks
Yeah.
need work.
So are we we are not therefore necessarily limited to enforcing dangerous sidewalk conditions just when properties change hands. That's what we've always
Right.
used to trigger it, but we could.
If we updated the ordinance, we
Update
could,
the
yeah.
ordinance.
I mean, our current ordinance, we could, it's just very ill-defined, and I wouldn't feel comfortable asking Public Works to make those sort of judgment
No, no,
calls.
sure.
Mhm.
But I wanted, so that was but I wanted to make sure we are not limited. I think I've been told somewhere in the past, like, that's the only time the borough can do that is when properties change hands. And if it was like, as if this was like some big legal limitation, I kind of thought, well, I feel like the borough can decide that it's going to enforce that other times.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a public safety issue.
Mhm.
It's like, okay.
And I think I've mentioned this, but alongside this plan to hold, property owners responsible for their sidewalks, the borough also needs to repair its own broken
Yes,
segments.
yes.
so.
Thank you, because I definitely want to emphasize that as well. Yeah, we actually have a contractor coming Monday to do a couple of small projects here around 100 Conway. And then, of course, which we'll talk about, well, it's not on the agenda this month, there's nothing really to say, but the spring stormwater project on Haverford will be fixing a lot of the sidewalk on Arbor Park. And then our insurance company is requiring us to do some repairs to the sidewalk at 201 Sabine, which will start next week. So,
And then we should also identify remaining segments that need to be done and
Yeah.
create a timeline for that. As we ask everybody else.
Yeah.
We should get
I
around,
agree.
get around sidewalks.
Fred, just one other point. You have always mentioned that stretch of sidewalk on East Wynwood between Foxhall and Park.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anything can be done. I think there's a step up at one point. I mean, there's certain kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
difficult stretches for people to navigate.
So the code revision that Samantha's proposing includes elevation shifts. So
Right.
that's the main problem on the segment, is sort of, you hit a 2-inch jump when you're, or whatever, and it's difficult to navigate with a stroller or a wheelchair or whatever, or you can trip over it. So
Okay,
I
so this
believe
would be
that would be covered with the legislation. Right now, it's not. Right now, that is not considered a hazard, but if we were to change our code, then it would be.
Okay.
It would be required to be fixed. And that is an accessibility issue under the ADA. I mean,
Mhm.
this is a significant barrier. So
Yeah, I don't think you have to convince us of that.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
figure out
so
how to
yeah,
get that done.
the answer is yes. That should
Absolutely.
be fixed
Okay.
as well. Great. So I think a strong recommendation to move forward with this. Next item on the agenda. Anything else? Okay. Is the Haverford Avenue bike pilot.
sure. So, my apologies to our chair here, Councilmember Bush. I remembered that I had actually told the borough traffic engineer to have the draft plan ready for the November 3rd council meeting, not this meeting, so shame
Okay.
on me on that one. I will report that myself, the traffic engineer, and Kimberly Bezak from the Narborough Cycling Club walked the area 2 or 3 weeks ago from the intersection of Wynwood and Haverford up to Essex and Haverford. We didn't really run across any major issues. This should be a relatively straightforward situation to implement. The tie-ins, that was really the main thing I worried about. Near Wynwood, it will tie in with that existing sort of protected pedestrian sort of area there. And then down by Essex, it will end and tie in with that there's like a little teeny parking lot right there with steps that lead up to the train station.
Right before the liquor store?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So on that end, it would tie in with there, and then there would be signage at both ends, to direct bicyclists accordingly. So at Essex, cyclists would be instructed to head if they're coming up Haverford, they'd be directed to turn left on Essex and not, because there wouldn't be a bike lane anymore,
Yeah.
not to go, into
Mhm.
traffic. And then, vice versa down at Haverford, signage would be installed to direct bicyclists from where they need to go.
Okay.
Eric, is there anything else you want to add on all that, or does that sound like a pretty good summary of where we're at right now?
Yeah, no, I think that's about it. I talked to Mike a little bit about it, and yeah, I think that's right. There's this pretty good amount of room along that road that we can fit this in. It should be a good opportunity to see how this works, and plan out future ideas down that roadway.
All right, sounds good. Look forward to hearing more about that next week. All right, now we have potential action items at the next business meeting. So we have our list of infrastructure projects. Hope everybody got a chance to look those over. They were inadvertently removed from the packet, but we got to look at them yesterday. These are proposed projects for next year. They will require borrowing, which we've talked about at the last council meeting and at F&A. We've been talking about it at F&A. Some of these projects, a lot of these projects came from KCBA's analysis of sort of necessary engineering needs, and we haven't really talked about a lot of them, at least since I've been on council. So how do you want to structure this, Samantha? Do you want to, should we just ask questions about individual items? Do you want to do why don't you do like a general overview?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I did invite Chief Gallagher, thank you for being here, in case there are any specific questions about some of the items specific to the police department.
Great.
As I figured if he could speak more authoritatively on that, then I would be able to. So basically when trying to determine our infrastructure projects for next year, I looked at what sort of things we've already kind of committed ourselves to. I looked at various reports and requests from internal and external sources and put this list together for consideration. I will note, I think the big theme for a lot of infrastructure projects in the borough is kind of, we need to finish certain planning phases, and then I think we'll be in better shape to actually do more work. I think on almost every category here, there's a note or request about something regarding planning. So, for example, stormwater management, I kind of have a note there that, before we can do any more stormwater work, I think we need to complete our mapping and inspection project. Or for transportation, I think before we get too much further with bike projects, the borough should consider doing an active transportation plan. Or before doing more road work, I think we should get the sewer mapping, the stormwater mapping, and the active transportation plan done. That way we're not doing things piecemeal, or we're not doing things and changing our minds about what we should have done. And then in addition, even with the building, my thanks to Eric, the borough engineer, Panoni, I think we need to do the energy audit as requested by the climate action plan, and save some money potentially to implement anything that might find, before going all in on doing all the building improvements. And then let's see here. And then again with Narberth Park, I think we need to complete a master park plan for Narberth Park before we can commit to infrastructure improvements there. And then of course with 201 Sabine, I think we have to figure out the long-term purpose of that property before we can commit to any infrastructure improvements there. So that's kind of the big theme. Within that theme, I guess I'll kind of go section by section here and save the 100 Conway for last. So stormwater management, that's pretty straightforward because we've already committed, rightfully so, to doing the Haverford Ave project. And then we'll talk more about it in a minute here, but good news for the borough, we got the county transportation grant funding. So my thanks to Councilman Bush and everyone and Eric and everyone who is involved in that.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of my thought on stormwater is, we'll do the things we've committed to already, and then otherwise, until we complete the mapping and inspection, we can't really define our priorities for stormwater beyond that. Again, transportation is a similar story in that, obviously the bridge, we're going to do our best to do. That number is 0 that I note because the borough has already taken out the debt it needs to cover its share of the cost for that project. So there's no new money required for that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the Haverford Ave sidewalk that will get fixed as part of the Haverford Ave stormwater project. I received, and then as we talked about this Haverford bike pilot, the Biking Coalition Cycling Club have also talked about wanting to try and do a pilot on Narberth Ave in 2022. And so there's some funding for that. We've already been kind of talking about committed to the mainline greenway. I've heard from various constituencies in the borough the idea of looking at possible new design for the Station Circle area. So I did want to put some planning dollars aside for that. And then as I mentioned as well, an active transportation plan. If I'm telling anyone anything they know already, my apologies. I don't know what your familiarity with one of these is. Basically, an active transportation plan defines what all your existing sort of transportation options are, whether it be public transit, bus, train, walking via sidewalks, cycling routes, and kind of comes up with an amalgamated view of how people can get around and where the gaps are and how to fill those gaps, in particular in regards to walking and biking. I thought it was really helpful in my last municipality for organizing thoughts about where to, we'll say a lot about my last town, but where to install sidewalk. I'm very grateful that Narberth already has sidewalk pretty much everywhere. But where to, do sidewalk, where to do bike trails, where to do, bike lanes and bike facilities, and how to connect all that with your existing public transit resources with the SEPTA rail line and the SEPTA bus. So that is the overview on transportation. And then maybe after I go through all this, we can talk about specific line items and questions. Again, sewer, I think, the biggest thing is we just need to get the mapping done, and once we know what we're dealing with, then we can start fixing things. And then like I said, for parks, again, master park plan done, then we can actually do things. And basically, with 100 Conway and 80 Windsor, I looked through the KCBA report and received requests from various, parts of the borough here. And, the main goal of these repairs is to make the building more inclusive, more compliant, more secure, and to take care of deferred maintenance on the building. For example, this year we had the major ceiling issue over in the library. I actually just got a call from Ken Watson before this meeting that when our HVAC contractor went to turn on the heat over at 80 Windsor, it looks like the heater there has some pretty major issues. We found out this year that the air conditioning unit here in 100 Conway is no longer operable. I think the only cosmetic thing that's really in here, honestly, is replacing the carpet at 100 Conway. But I think anyone who has been to 100 Conway can understand why that request is in here. But all the other requests are, things that are, maintenance, deferred maintenance or such. So that's the general overview. Looks like there might be some questions in the crowd here, so I'm happy to take questions. And if it's something related to, building security or the police department, I'll be happy to have Chief Gallagher jump in as well.
You had just mentioned carpeting, so I'm going to ask, in 100 Conway, which carpeting needs replacement for retirement?
Out in the hallway.
There's carpeting there? I guess there is. I guess I couldn't picture. I could picture the office in here, and I'm like, where? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if the number from KCBA.
Can't picture it.
I can't picture That's right, I know, like, that's, I'm gonna have to notice that now, all right.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
gonna
and
be
actually
cluttered
right out in the
around, so
hallway
it's
here.
gotta be-
Yeah.
It's gotta
Yeah.
be carpeted, but
The,
invisible infrastructure.
I'm sorry.
and actually the number from KCBA, I'm not sure if that included this room in the admin office, so it might be a lower, you
I'm
know.
guessing. All right, that makes sense, I just never noticed there was carpeting, I was just like,
Okay.
probably walked on it hundreds and hundreds of times.
And I do believe as well, the police department still has the original carpeting as well.
Our carpeting was redone when the borough office was redone.
Okay.
So we are, I guess 2 years ago, a little more than that, we had our carpeting replaced as well as a new paint job in the office.
Okay. So I did have a question for the chief, I guess, since we're here. So there's a significant change to the lock system, the access system here. We're talking about replacing with an electronic lock that uses key fobs. So how would, is the expectation that the building would be completely locked during the day and you would have to like request access? Or what would the?
No, I'm sorry, actually, I'll speak to this one first, if you don't mind. No, the way it would work is you can set the system so doors are on certain doors. You can control each door individually, and certain doors could be automatically unlocked. So right now, like one of our housemen like unlock each of the doors and lock them each day. Whereas with the system, we could set it to where the door would automatically unlock at 8 a.m. and lock at 4 p.m. unless there was a public meeting, in which case we could set it, to have different lock and unlock times. We could also set the doors in this room or in the multi-purpose room, to automatically lock or unlock depending on what events are going on. My main concern, and this is actually a proposal that I've really pushed for this year. The borough did already implement this system over at 80 Windsor. I have lingering concerns about who all does and doesn't have access to this building. There is no master borough key list, and who knows if people have made copies of keys over time or what's going on. Whereas with this system, if someone were to ever not be involved in the borough anymore, you just essentially deactivate their fob, and that's that. You can also control which doors people have access to. So, for example, like the police would have access, to every door in the building, whereas, like myself, until I get the appropriate training, like I would only have access, to everything but the police station, for example. I just think it would be a huge. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to discuss it in detail on this committee. I just think it's a security upgrade that all of us here pretty badly needs, and has been, I think, a great solution to things over at 80 Windsor. I don't know, Chief, if you have any additional comments?
Yeah, and our access control that we currently have in the police department was provided by Valley Forge Security for a long period of time. It predates me and predates all of us. So there's access control with fobs on each door down here and out by the quad in between the police department and the fire department. You're basically taking everything and putting on the one system with classic alarm for access control. And the levels of access are going to be different for individuals, employees, Samantha mentioned. For instance, in order to go into the police department side, you have to have what's known as, and you're a civilian, you have to have what's known as CJIS training, which Samantha's actually going to go through and has agreed to go through in order to have that access. That doesn't mean that we can't bring anybody in there, because we can just sign you in. And as long as you're accompanied by a police officer, you can have access to the police station. However, other employees, including Samantha, should have access to the police station 24 hours a day, 365 days a year as the borough manager. The only thing that we need to do is to get her CJIS trained, CJIS certified, which the mayor is, Ken Watson is, and John Flynn is. Now, however, our parking controller is not, because there's no need for the parking controller to be there without a police officer attending or accompanying that parking controller. So that's what we have right now. We have Valley Forge Security. It's woefully outdated. In addition to that, the database is no longer accessible, so we don't know who is coming and going inside, in and out of the police department. The classic alarm is going to give us that system of access control, and it's going to give the different, you're going to be able to set different doors for different, as Samantha said, for different times. But as of right now, what we have, even if you look at our access control on our doors, Our doors are really not that, our door that goes out to the outside area is not that strong. It needs to have, the infrastructure itself needs to be improved, the mag lock. It could be compromised, there's no doubt. If someone got a crowbar and they wanted to do that, they could compromise that. Now, as we know, in addition to law enforcement sensitive material inside a police station, you have some different public safety concerns because it comes to, obviously, weapons. And you have to make sure that that's secured at all times. So these are just some of the things that we were talking about, and we're trying to ride on the dovetails of the classic alarm project and get our infrastructure improved as well. We met with them recently, and we've had this ongoing conversation since Samantha's arrived.
That would be the other big benefit too, is that we would know whoever swipes in whenever they do, in case there ever is an issue. For example, I'll admit, in 80 Windsor, we've been using that function to make sure our cleaner is living up to their responsibilities over there. Because there's questions about how often 80 Windsor is getting cleaned, and now we have the fob, we're able to see when the cleaner swiped in and all that kind of thing.
And if I could just add, that would also help us with management for officers who are working by themselves without supervision. Then they're supposed to report for a shift on a weekend. We will be able to know whether they came in on time or they did not. So those are other factors as well. It would help us with a management tool in addition to the other stuff described.
I mean, I worry about people, casual users of the building, people who belong to boards or commissions or at public meetings, being able to get in and out, or being locked out by various, electronic fob means. So what's going to be somebody comes in and they're not able to get into their room. How are they going to call? How are they going to get access to the building?
That shouldn't happen. I mean, people are fallible, but what should happen is the system would be set so that the doors to this room and like the main entry doors would be unlocked whenever there's a public committee meeting going on per our committee schedule. And anyone who has filed a room reservation form with the borough, as part of that process, we would have the doors already set to be unlocked for whatever room they've reserved, whether it's this room or the multi-purpose room, which will give us control as well to enforce our room rental program.
I mean, I'm just saying that at some point that's going to break down with some of the borrowers, the room borrowers, the people who aren't regular users. So they're going to call the police. They're going to call you. I mean.
So I'm trying so what sort of? Sorry, I still don't understand what sort of scenario that you mean.
I mean, I feel like there are meetings in here many times a month in ordinary times, right? I mean, how many groups meet? I guess primarily, I guess a lot of the time that was the 4th of July. But I'm trying to think who uses the space.
There's always going to be something always goes wrong. What's the plan?
Yeah, what's
Something goes
the
wrong.
plan if
We
something
have
goes wrong?
somebody here 24 hours a day right now.
Yeah.
We have either police or housemen.
That's true. Yeah.
Are they going to have access to the system to unlock a door, or is there a manual override that they can use in those cases? That's, I think.
Yeah, there's both. So the thing about the system is, like, me and Michelle Carroll, for example, we're the system admins. Like, we can access it from anywhere and do a manual override. In addition, I would think that Ken and John, I would want to have access to all the doors here as well. So someone would have either of those options. Either Ken or John could open it, or someone from the police department, or me or Michelle could do it remotely if we needed to.
All right. So so the building has its own generator, right? So in case of a power failure, it would still work.
Yeah.
What if if our computer system goes down, does it work? Like if we have some sort of cyber attack, we get ransomware.
I mean, I assume if their access is probably through a fob.
Yeah.
Does it
It's
need
a
our computer
universal
system
fob
to make
that's
it
not
work,
gonna
or
be-
does it operate on its own system?
I'll find it out.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
No, I mean, I think that's.
All right, so other thoughts on this before I move on to a couple other items? Is anybody under time constraints here? Because we're already after 2.
I do have a meeting coming up, but.
Okay, well, why don't you raise any
Okay.
any concerns you have at this time then?
So, Samantha, I just wanted to ask, and I've mentioned this briefly, but when it comes to the HVAC plan, it looks like about 120,000 for the, I think it's mostly for the air conditioning, because that's what we did.
Yeah.
So my thought is just, and I think you've already allowed for this because you have the audit there, the energy audit. But my thought is that if you're replacing the HVAC for AC, you could also you convert the building to electric heat. With the,
Yeah, I
with
mean,
the heat
yeah, I mean,
pump.
that's a good thought. You know, I'd definitely be interested to get, you know, Eric's thoughts on that, since Panoni is gonna be doing the energy audit, and Panoni is working on the scope of work for the HVAC replacement. Eric, do you have any comments on that, or do you think that plan makes sense to do the energy audit and then see where we wanna go with the HVAC?
I mean, I think that is a good idea. The audit is going to give you the overview of, you know, all the potential items. But right in line with that, you know, you start planning out, and I think they started gathering today. They were around gathering some additional information for the HVAC. But yes, I think you just brought the audit to us, but that's definitely something that would be reasonable, a course of action there.
Yeah, I just see it as an opportunity to kind of showcase what can be done in Narberth, you know, with our borough property, and model for all of us what we could do with our property. So, and then this VAV, that's the biggest single, 70,000. Could you just say a few words about that? I'm not really familiar with that.
Yeah, Eric, I could look up the KCBA report, but Eric, before or while I do that, do you have any idea what that item means?
Which one was it?
It's part of the HVAC system?
Yeah, replace VAV terminals with VAV boxes. I think it's the
Variable
things
air
on top.
volume box.
I think they're the things on top of on the roof, right?
Okay, so
Hold on. HVAC, replace
I think it's some kind of ductwork system that makes the air.
boxes and diffusers. Replace air handlers are the big units outside. Controller. It's probably, I'm not exactly sure the exact terminology, but I believe it's the actual like handlers that are moving air around the building and diffusing air, you know, throughout the system.
okay, so I didn't realize, so it's more like 300,000 to replace the AC and really make it work.
Yeah.
And it might be 350 to do AC and heat with the heat pump system. You know, it might not be that much more.
I think it's a really smart thing to think about, whether it makes sense to put a little bit more and you get a lot, I mean, you're much more energy efficient. It's just time to think about it. So, maybe we may thank ourselves in the long run. And thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call, Rob.
Variable air volume. That's what that term is. It's the air handling equipment.
Okay.
Anything else, Rob? Thanks. That's a point.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Okay. Okay, so going back, if you don't mind me sticking with some of my line of questions, Michelle.
No, go ahead, get it.
All right, so police, so Chief, you were asking for an expansion of the video camera security system, right? Now is this similar to what you already use in the police station? Like, is this an expansion of
No, we
existing
don't have any,
system?
we have no current, right now, we don't have video surveillance inside the police station, to my knowledge. We have an old camera that is inoperable, and it may have been installed by Valley Forge Security. I don't have all the information about it, but my understanding is that it's inoperable. I've never seen any video recorded from that in the past 3.5 years, so I think it's just, you know, it's down. The video surveillance project that we're talking about is basically, you know, exterior video, not PTZ cameras, pan, tilt, zoom, but fixed position cameras in the front, the back, and either side of the building. We could also add cameras to the inside of the police station. We've discussed those options and alternatives. I believe that the quote that recently came in, probably within the past 2 months, Samantha, was around probably 11,365, something like that, for video surveillance. This is just something worth thinking about in terms of, you know, dumping in the dumpsters, keeping an eye not only on the police vehicles in the back as they're parked, but also public works vehicles, as well as the parking controller vehicle, incidents that may happen over at the basketball court, the tennis courts to a degree. the level of visuality that these cameras can get is just unprecedented. It's actually incredible as you walk around and you see what one fixed position camera, one fixed posted camera can do and how much it can capture. They usually have 14-day overwrites, but after 30, you can always adjust them with more storage on a main distribution frame to do a 30-day overwrite. That's usually kind of standard in the safety and security industry. Privately, in terms of borough governments, I would have to do a little bit more research. But it's automatically with a 14-day, 15-day overwrite, which means obviously the camera keeps recording, and then after 14 days it records over itself. So it doesn't really help, in my opinion, if it doesn't really help actually prevent stuff unless you have the appropriate signage. And myself and Samantha have talked about this numerous times. You have to have the signage with the cameras to let people know that this area is under video surveillance. The other good part is it helps you in an investigative capacity. If something occurs, a crime occurs, whether it occurs down in the courts, whether it's vandalism, criminal mischief to the building, a police car set on fire, it gives you that ability to go back and look and download that information, download it to a thumb drive or a disk, and make sure that you have that evidence that you need as the investigation progresses. So it's definitely a great solvability factor. I think it helps enhance security in many, many ways. The advances that are in video surveillance, in this day and age are just unprecedented. The tour that we just took a few months ago, probably about 2.5 months ago, Samantha, was just, the capability is just incredible. And the group that we actually had the quote provided from, they're working with other police departments and municipalities in the state right now, as well as private industry, and they're kind of like the lead dog in the hunt right now because of their pricing and because of what they offer in terms of options and alternatives.
I would think that, given what you said about security concerns, guns and whatever stored in the police station, and if you're going to be doing
that's another factor.
If you're going to be doing police interviews in there, I think it might be good to also put a camera in.
Well, if you're going to do police interviews, that would be a little bit of a different setup. When you talk about interviews and interrogations to get recorded, that's a different setup.
Okay.
That's not necessarily something you would have fixed. You would have to have that fixed within the room, and it's almost like independent of your other system. That would be a separate issue. Listen, I agree with that. I think that's great stuff to do. I'm all for it. I think interviews and interrogations right now, the rule of the day is that they get recorded. So I think for the most part that's good, but that would almost be a standalone system, a separate purchase versus what we're offering in terms of discussion now.
Okay.
But beyond interviews, we would be able to put something just in general for in the police station for general security.
Well, if we ever converted the locker room into an interview, which is ideal, we could certainly always have a fixed position camera in there anyway. But in order to present something for discovery, you would have to have a little bit more of a face-to-face interaction with the investigator, the interrogator. That's got to be something that would have to be qualified for the courts. Okay. So that's a little bit of a separate situation.
I have a question with the security cameras, if you're,
okay.
Do you have more about the security cameras?
Well, it doesn't sound like anyone's going to be monitoring these exactly. It's just they're going to be looking at, if there's an incident, they're going to be reviewing.
Well, we can do that. There can be a monitor. You can put monitors in the police station. My vision for the police department 3.5 years ago was to have monitors inside the police station that would basically have exterior surveillance, and we would be able to watch that in real time. Where we'd be able to look at that. And so any officer that was in there, sitting in there, would be able to see that. In addition to that, we would be able to also remotely, and Samantha and I discussed this before too, pull up those access points and look at the video as it's live around the borough. So there's a lot of choices that can be made within that system that are built in, that are included with the price point that was mapped out to us in the quote. So the monitor situation is just an expansion of the system once we get it installed. And I think that's the natural graduation of where we want to go, where we can go out and we can look at right inside the police station. We can bring you in and say, here, this is the rear lot, these are the police cars, this is the other areas of the building, stuff that we can look at. And I think it's just a great choice. But obviously we try to do the best that we could in terms of money. We realize budget's always a concern.
Yeah, and if council only wanted to be more of a reactive versus proactive thing to start, we could also do it that way as well.
Just trying to get a sense of how much police time will be dedicated to maintaining, or not really maintaining, but monitoring and doing work with the cameras. And it sounds like it's totally optional, that it could just be used.
Well, I think it's almost like kind of a like an independent system in one way, and in another way, you can actually get engaged. It's kind of an active participant system on the other side where you can get involved in it if you want. It depends on just what the need is, what the circumstances are.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to get in the way of, the active foot patrol and.
No.
Our force really
As a
getting
matter of
out.
fact, I would be against it. If it interfered with that, if it interfered with basic police services being rendered to the community, and that became a full-time job for police officers, then I would say, no, let's not do this. But that's not the case. That's not what this system is built for. In addition to that, if we ever got an administrative assistant, that administrative assistant actually would be able to monitor that stuff and look at it from time to time, and actually alert the officer on duty if he or she sees anything unusual.
Oh, so my question was about ongoing, because I saw there's a project management, I think that's just like an installation charge. I was looking at the price for the cameras and installation, and then I was just wondering, do we need sort of software fees ongoing, or cloud storage, or are there ongoing fees that are associated with it?
There's license fees that are ongoing. I don't know whether that's annual or every 2 years, but I would have to go contact with Remo Patitucci, the sales representative, to see what those license fees are. It's obviously nowhere near the cost of the initial setup,
Yeah.
but there are general license maintenance fees that you have to provide for the system and the software itself.
Yeah, it looks like the, let's see here. Two things with the proposal. I realize this is actually an outdated version of the proposal, because you see the total price is a little over $12,000. We actually got a revised one from Remo after I give the chief a lot of credit for doing some pencil sharpening with Remo to get the price down a little bit. It looks like quantity 3 item ID Wave Pro-01, which says single camera license with lifetime software upgrade, and that is a total of $345. So we could check. I mean, that to me sounds like it's probably the software.
Yeah.
We can definitely confirm that.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if the 14-day override, if that implied that there was a cloud storage system behind this. I just was curious about how, but it sounds like this is pretty much comprehensive. There's not like another
Oh, it's
monthly charge
a very good
to run it.
system.
It's basically, this is what you need to buy, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to offer another piece of it, recently there was a police department in Montgomery County that went through an audit, independent audit, similar to what Narberth went through 4 years ago with Matrix Consulting. And one of the things that they told that borough police department is that they lacked in state-of-the-art technology when it came to access control and exterior and interior video surveillance. So that was one of the areas where it was negative for that police department. But state-of-the-art technology or lacking thereof. And this is definitely two areas that are critical for safe police operations.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. And then the police office renovation, that's the new furniture that you were talking about, or is that something else?
No, this is basically the, Samantha, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the new furniture piece that we discussed downstairs along with the laptops.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've already discussed that. So there's one kind of fairly large ticket item, which is replacing the fire alarm system in the building. I think KCBA suggested that it was primarily for accessibility. I think that the fire alarm pulls are too high. Is that the rationale for, I mean, I'm looking at one.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, someone in a wheelchair definitely would not be able to reach that.
You don't think so? How high is that?
It's too high for someone.
Yeah, so Rob's in the chair here.
But maybe not, I don't know.
It's probably.
Let me look at what the KCB
Yeah,
report
that's
says.
90K or 85,000. That's a There's no, yeah, it's just, it's a large number, and
What is, right, but what do we mean by alarm system?
Here we go, yeah. It
What needs
says,
to be replaced and why?
The KCBA report says the fire alarm system for the building is an old system. The majority of fire alarm pull stations do not meet ADA height requirements.
But it functions, it's just not.
you know,
It also says, sorry, I'm reading further here. The existing fire alarm system is beyond the anticipated service life and should be replaced with a new system with ADA compliant device elevations.
but again, that's beyond the service life, that doesn't mean it's not working, right? I guess we don't want it to fail.
No, I hear what you're
but-
saying, I don't know, I mean, I don't
I mean,
know,
I
I don't know
I-
how to assess whether that really means it's risky or it just means,
Yeah, I think a lot of the accessibility is about people being able to get in, people being able to get access, and, you know, I
you
think we
could
support
also
that.
almost certainly lower these all for much less than $85,000.
Yeah, I question that.
It's a
Let's say,
drywall
look into that
job.
particular item. Why don't we look a little more closely at that one item, because it's such a big,
But, you know, if it
It's-
needs
it's
to
a-
be
it's a
done
large
for
cost.
safety reasons, I'm all for
yeah,
it. If
it's
if
85,000, it's worth taking a little attention over.
I don't know how old it is, we should probably look into that.
Yeah, I'll get you more information on that, absolutely. Yeah.
So the active transportation plan, is that something that could lead to a complete street
Yes,
bill?
actually.
Because that is definitely in our comp plan, that we should produce such an item. Okay.
Yeah, when I did the program, I went through to do one in my last town. That was an option that the borough council there opted at that time not to pursue, but it's certainly, yes.
All right, because that's definitely, it's a comp
Yeah.
plan goal, and it's a.
Absolutely, I had a question about the active transportation plan too, so we'll put it in since you just brought it up. Because I think that's great to get that planning process started. It's been something we've been talking about for years, and it's really is a focus on the comprehensive plan. We'll pay a lot of benefits if we can get to the point of a complete streets. I think it would be great. But, so who, was my question, if we start this project up, do we have what are your thoughts on how we determine the appropriate professional to work with? Because that's so
Yeah.
significant, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we would want to do a RFP for different planners to work with on it. And, take a look at the bids we get and do interviews with 2 or 3 different planners and see who all we think is the best fit for what Narberth needs.
All right, and one more plan I wanted to note is the Master Parks Plan. So, as a former rec board member, I can say that, within the last few years, rec board was asked to produce sort of its own internal plan for the parks, and then there was some funding for KCBA to come in and work with rec board on plans for the parks. So those both didn't really, so things Parks and Rec Board produced recommendations that then kind of sat or didn't really get, there wasn't really a lot of attention paid to them by Borough Council or by, Borough Manager at the time. So I guess what's going to be the difference here? How is this going to be different from prior planning efforts?
Yeah, so I think, what I've seen, I have seen some of the draft materials, and I think, my take on it is it seems like, at least with Narberth Park, the draft materials I've seen, seem like they're like 90% of the way there. There's 1 or 2 ways we could do it, depending on what this committee and Borough Council and Bowlesman Borough Council, but, feedback from this committee and Parks and Rec, as I can understand that, the borough would have to decide whether it would want KCBA to come in and finish it out, or if the borough would want to bring in a different design professional and maybe not start from scratch, but take, the 90% that has already been done and, get us over the finish line with it, so that it can then be presented to Borough Council and reviewed and adopted as appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a fair point, especially since you've been with us only 4 or 5 months. There are these prior plans that we just don't want to lose track of. I'm thinking also with regard to Station Circle, there's been various renderings put forward by graduate students. We've had at least
Oh my
two
gosh, yeah.
classes taught by a NARB at Temple.
Yeah.
And so we have lots of visualizations of what Station Circle could look like. You know, so there's just a lot of material already that we want to be sure doesn't get.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get the new access system in, and we're just gonna get council in here and just lock the doors. And then, you know, when we pick plans, then everyone can leave.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of really, really great stuff that came
Yeah,
out of
right.
this
Michelle and I
process.
went to those classes.
But
But no, seriously, I mean, I view my role here as really helping, and thanks for letting me know those materials exist, is, you know, to collate those materials for Borough Council, present them, and help guide council to making a time-efficient decision
Yeah.
on the direction you want to move forward with.
Great, and I can help with finding some of that, and Jim Spear has a lot of that recorded, I think,
yeah, I think they
including
were super exploratory.
Penn graduate students also came, and that was recorded, related to the park and to the Station Circle. So we have been thinking about it, but
Yeah, so with park planning, I guess the one thing when I was sort of jotting down, like, because there's still uncertainties about Sabine Avenue, and because council's already committed to expanding the open and park space there if possible, and it's conceivable that we'll arrive at a plan in the day of the future use for that property that actually provides different and significantly larger opportunities for park space. It seems like a shame not to say, but I mean, I understand that we can't always be putting everything, waiting to plan, but it seems like a shame not to plan the park spaces jointly, because it may end up being the case that that would give an opportunity to use. I hate to be locked into a vision of parks that just is basically just Narberth, park, because I think that we have more opportunity, possibly.
I think that makes, I mean, I could definitely see where you're coming from on that. I guess my concern from my kind of, you know, viewpoint on it is just, I mean, looking at the general state of Narberth Park, I would prefer to be able to put investment into it sooner than later. But I also get where you're coming from in terms of looking at the parks holistically, as opposed to just, what do we want to do at Narberth Park?
So my other question is, the only thing I've seen about Narberth Park is essentially the same park with a path. And I think it looks like there's a different feel, like the possibility of using sort of the outfield is possibly for like, I'm not sure if that's I don't know what that is. I mean, and maybe changing a tennis court to pickleball. But it's basically, I mean, it's not dramatically different. Unless I've missed something. I feel like I've missed something. I feel like it's a great idea. We should maintain the parks more, but I don't see a lot of dramatic changes here. I don't see anything other than relocating pathways. But maybe I've missed. But what have I missed? I mean,
No,
is there
I
a park
think-
plan that I've totally not seen? Because that's very possible.
I think, you know, within the Parks and Rec department, there's a consensus that the current uses of the park should continue to be the current uses of the park, and, you know, the restrooms need to be fixed up, there might be more lighting, there might be more of a path, but, you know, that in general, the current uses are working, and it's working for the community.
Good.
So I think maybe that's one reason why we think, you know, Samantha thinks we're close, is because there's a
Yeah.
pretty good general consensus. I mean, there are areas like, you know, there are areas where there's still some debate, but in general, the general layout of the park, I mean, Parks and Rec were considered different layouts, and they decided that it wouldn't be able to fit, you know, baseball and football need a lot of green space, so they wouldn't be, you know, you can't really change a lot of the park and keep the current uses, and they felt that keeping the current uses was important, so it's incremental. The changes that are there are relatively minor, you're right.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure I hadn't missed it, because I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. I mean, there are things we could do to improve that park to make it much more accessible. It's very difficult for some people to get in and out of that park because of the location of the, you know, if it's just like a wheelchair or a person with a walker. So those are, but I guess just back to your point, and also noting that there's a floodplain here. And our park plan now shows, you know, keeping tennis courts and pickleball paved over right there in the floodplain, when there's a possibility that we'll be developing park space that could be more suitable for that, and therefore we wouldn't be committing to pave over, or even we may even decide to remove some of the pavement and then impervious surface that's in a floodplain. That's why I kind of hate to walk into a plan without knowing what opportunities we have at Sabine Avenue.
Mhm.
Because of unique considerations like the fact that we have a floodplain there.
Well, the next decision point seems like is the skate park, when the skate park pilot
I'm not trying to be difficult, I just want to make sure that we don't
expires.
I
Yeah,
we don't
understand.
make-
It's just,
make
you know,
decisions too soon.
I think
Yeah.
Samantha, suggesting that we get more sort of formal agreement on where we're going before we spend significantly on Narberth Park.
Okay.
Right, and then Sabine is gonna take even more time to discuss, so if we're waiting on changes for Narberth Park until we're done with determining Sabine Park's, contours, or, making, determining whether we're gonna expand green space there, what we're gonna do,
I guess my
it might take too long, right?
What park planning is $10,000 for 99% of the way there in Norbert Park, and we're not talking about Sabine? What is the plan? Then at that point, is it planning or is it just doing, like?
No, I
Right.
mean, you'd be surprised how much planners cost. So I did, master park plan in my last job. And for a park area of similar size to Narberth Park, that was $60,000. And then 30,000 of it was covered by grant, and then 25,000 was covered by an outside entity, and so the borough only had spent 5.
Mhm. Well, I think it's a fair point, Michelle, what you're saying. I mean, maybe as part of the planning, we could consider a certain square footage of green space at Sabine, as part of the plan, that could accommodate one of the uses.
I guess the other time point that I'm thinking of, which this could definitely, I completely understand if this is considered too aggressive of a timeline. That is one of my strengths and weaknesses, I guess I'll say, is, in April is when the next round of DCNR grants are going to be due. And one of those is park development funds. We would be probably best off going for the one that's purely 50-50. They have one that's straight up free money, but you can only get 20,000 from that. And we could try to go for that and then maybe get some, there's a lot of different ways we could do it, but anyway, those grants applications are due around mid to late April. And in order for us to be competitive for that, we would need to have, and then even know what we're applying for grant funding for, we would need to have some sort of park plan done before we apply for that grant. So I will admit that would be the very ambitious goal, would be if we said, hey, we want to get the park plan done by, March.
I think personally we'll regret it if we let the tail wag the dog. I don't think we're ready. That's just my candid opinion, based on,
Well,
based on
but
the number of
that does answer-
variables, the number of things still up in the air, the difficulty of doing a really good comprehensive park plan that would include all of them. I just think that would be, it's a shame to say, well, let's apply for a grant because it's there and that's the deadline, and then find out, well, no, we're kind of, I guess you can always turn the grant down, but I think it has a tendency to shape the direction that you go.
But I think that does answer the question, why are we spending this money? Why is it going to be different? It's because it's going to be targeted for a grant. We need to get a plan in, or we need to get a professional plan of some kind ready, so that we take our ideas, put them into a professional format, so that we can apply for a grant. And maybe it's next year. Maybe it's 2024.
2023.
Yeah, maybe it's a year out. But that does answer the question of why we should do this, is because then it helps us get a grant.
Yeah, no, I
It is
wasn't
every
saying,
April,
no,
yeah.
my question wasn't why should we do a park plan?
Well, that was mine.
It was, I think we should do a
Yours
park
was,
plan. I just
yours-
think
yours
that,
was different.
I just think, yeah, I agree. I
Okay.
think
So
doing a
maybe that's a
comprehensive
tight
park
deadline,
plan
let's
is part of our comprehensive plan. It's something that I hear people in the community.
I mean, you
Wants
can
to
talk with
expand.
Parks and Rec as well, and see if they think that it's something we could knock out in a few months. See what their opinion
Well,
is.
maybe just for today, the question I guess I need feedback on from this committee is, are we comfortable with the idea of me putting $10,000 in the 2022 budget to move forward with a park plan, however long that takes?
We're going to need to do it eventually.
Yeah, I think we're okay with it.
We definitely want to do a park plan.
All right, all right, so
Yeah,
I think we're
it's
okay
just,
with
I
that.
think it's just a question if we could also include part of, Sabine green
Okay.
space.
Yeah, we can talk with them as we go through the process of, figure out who to work with and all that. We could talk to that consultant about it.
Okay. All right, so I think I've queried pretty much all the things that I had questions about. Does anybody else have questions about these? Any other items on this?
Fred, I'm gonna have to feel.
You're running on, okay, do we need anything else?
I was supposed to have a call at 2:30.
Oh, okay, well, we got, all
Already scheduled.
right, so just saying, so are we gonna recommend this to council that we go ahead with this? So do we have any
Yeah, I think
Any particular issues with this basic
You said that
agenda?
you'd be able to look a little bit into we'll look a little bit more into the fire alarm.
Yeah, look a little more into the fire
Maybe have
alarm.
that conversation.
Okay,
with
And I'll
everybody.
find out about what happens with the fob system and the event of power system failure.
yeah, okay. Sounds good. I think we can plan to move forward. Again, for everybody at home, these were projects that were determined years ago by a KCBA report, and the borough just hasn't had the bandwidth to deal with them, so these are
No, I
mostly
mean, I wanted to
ongoing.
say,
A lot of them.
I'm just really glad,
Yeah,
really
it's great to
impressed
fix
and
it.
happy that you're willing to get us moving on these projects, because I think a lot of people in the community and the council, we sort of felt like, okay, well, we've got this information. Are we just going to sort of put this on the shelf and be like, yeah, well, we just never could really do it? And I think, I think that we owe it to ourselves and the community to like secure our buildings and, have things that work. I think we can do that. So thank you for putting this together.
Yes, thank you, Samantha.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple more items before we're done today, but Rob,
You
you
okay
can go.
with that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Next item is
See you all.
an update on the stormwater bump outs. And I see, and thanks, Chief. Yeah.
Thank you.
I see that Eric is still here. I don't know if you're gonna,
Sure, I'll start and then maybe Eric, do anything you'd like to add? So really the biggest thing I had for today was just announcing the good news that the borough was awarded the grant. So we'll have to get the grant contract and paperwork taken care of, and then we can actually, start moving forward with doing the project. So really that's just the news for today, and I'll work with Councilmember Bush to keep this as an agenda item as appropriate to keep you all informed as to how that project is moving along. Eric, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, it should be a good project for the borough, collectively towards our stormwater and our PRP and just beautifying the street. And, we'll look forward to get it going once we get the grant in place.
all right. Exciting. Yeah, this is a green stormwater infrastructure, so should be attractive, and it should be, I'll start in the spring, right? Or,
I would hope, well, I guess, so what's gonna have to happen is, it just depends on when the county gets me there's a grant contract we'll have to sign, and then once we have that done, then Eric can, Eric did a lot of good work already on the design for it. Eric can finalize any design stuff we need to finalize, and we can get a bid document together, and then we can get it out to bid. Absolutely, the goal is to do it in 2022, yes.
all right. Excellent. Okay. Last item is public comment. Is there anybody who's been patiently waiting their turn for public comment?
And we have
One's in the room.
Mr. Bordeaux is with us. David, do you have any comments for us?
Yeah, well, okay, so David probably has some comments about the skate park, but we'll talk about those offline, I think. Okay, thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Well, today.